What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another video. In this video, I want to talk to you about Elvis and Priscilla and how Priscilla says that she wasn't very overly impressed with dating Elvis. Now, how did they meet? Priscilla's stepfather, Paul Beaulieu, enlisted in the army, and he was moved to Germany, West Baden Air Base. Now, Priscilla, how they actually met was Priscilla met one of Elvis's friends because Elvis went over there in '58. And they made their connection that way. Now, initially, as you can imagine, her parents disapproved of, their meeting and being around each other. For one, the obvious reason was the age difference because Priscilla was 14 and Elvis was 24, which is a topic I'm not going to get into right now. For this video, I've gotten into it on some other videos, but that off the bat, being a 10-year age difference was one. Them, Priscilla's parents being conservative anyway, they might be a little scared about having Priscilla be around this sex symbol Elvis Presley, the biggest star in the world. They could have some reservations about that as well. She says, "I was never impressed with dating Elvis. Perhaps I thought that it was all a dream, or maybe it was because Elvis was very down to earth. He made me feel comfortable." And yeah, Elvis did have that effect on people. He was very down to earth. He didn't party. He didn't do any of that stuff. He was a very sweet, humble Southern guy. And so maybe in that aspect, she didn't feel overly awestruck because how down to earth Elvis was. Now, this next quote, I'm not sure if she's talking about in the first few years of their initial relationship or later on, because obviously later on, once they got married, she probably talked about it a little more. But she says, "I always kept our relationship private. I felt that he was publicized so much already. It was my own life, my own business." Or maybe it's because Elvis was so self-protective anyway. He's his own man, a very understanding, compassionate person, and he accepts people fully. But as far as his personal life was concerned, he's very protective. Now, if you think about this, this was very true about Elvis. He didn't want his info, his life story all out in the streets. Like, he rarely went to Hollywood parties. He wasn't into that scene. He just liked the fellowship of just, some close friends and family. And Elvis's inner circle, the Memphis Mafia, were basically made up of people he met in the 50s and, Charlie in the army. In the early 60s, he kept a close knit of people. So, yeah, he did keep very private. And, that also brings to mind what Muhammad Ali told him when they met, and that Muhammad Ali actually felt sorry for Elvis because he didn't get out so much. Muhammad Ali thought that maybe, Elvis should get out more, and, that he felt sorry for him. Now, as we get to the early 60s, before they were married, Priscilla stayed in Memphis with his dad, Vernon. Elvis often traveled from California to Memphis to visit her in between movies. And she says that she would occasionally visit him in Hollywood. Now, I don't really agree with what she says here. She says that she didn't go to Hollywood to visit him much because she says that he needed his space while he was working. And, it kind of comes off as, Priscilla like, well, I want to give him his space. He's professional. He's at work. When I personally think that she wanted to be around him whenever she could. She didn't want him out of her sight, and I can see where she's coming from. The tabloids, saying that he's with every single leading lady that, he's in a movie with, and she is at home, wanting him to come back home, wondering what's going on. Are the tabloids true? Elvis tells her, hey, don't worry about it. It's just media. They're just trying to hype the next movie. But, she sees pictures of him and the actresses together, so she doesn't know what to believe. So personally, I think that she wanted to be around him all the time. And it's actually funny while we're on this topic, one time Lisa Marie came up to Linda Thompson and says that my mommy doesn't like you. And Linda says, why is that? And Lisa says, because you get to go everywhere with my daddy. And when my mom and dad were married, he didn't bring her around at all. So I happen to believe that Priscilla would have wanted to be around Elvis as much as she could. She says, I don't think that he could do his best if I was around. I felt that was his job, his business, and it was not my place to be there. Most of the time, I stayed in Memphis and occupied my time at the dance studio. I went to dinner with a girlfriend. I was perfectly happy the way it was. Now, when I read that, she says she was perfectly happy the way it was, with Elvis working in Hollywood and her never going to see him and him only coming home periodically in between movies. I don't buy that. I personally do not agree with that. She says she was perfectly happy. I've heard so many reports of her saying how much she hated it, sitting there pining away for Elvis, which I don't blame her. And, waiting for him to finally decide to marry her, and all her insecurities. Am I pretty enough? Do I look right enough for him? She dyed her hair black, wear a ton of makeup, everything to please Elvis. So I don't believe that, she's telling the truth here in this interview, but, who can blame her? Her whole life revolved around Elvis and his schedule. So I think that she just did some of these things to pass the time, although she wasn't too happy with them. Now, I just bought the book Elvis and Me. I read it a long time ago, all the way through. I read it through in like a few days. I really enjoyed reading it. But it was like the first Elvis material I really got my hands on that talked about his personal life. And I believe, I'm not quite sure, I will find out, once I read the book again, did she actually have an affair with a guy at the dance studio? I don't remember. But, Priscilla was alone, Elvis was alone, and they both started to have extramarital, well, it wasn't marital here, but they started to have, relationships outside of their own. Comment down below. Tell me if something happened at that dance studio, because now that I read that, my mind's starting to get refreshed on it. Now, we all know what happened eventually with Elvis and Priscilla. Priscilla filed for divorce in 1972 after meeting Mike Stone in 1968. We know about what happened with that relationship and that situation, and which, may not have caused but didn't help Elvis's downward spiral. Now, some people love Priscilla and say that they were soulmates, her and Elvis, and others say Priscilla was bad for Elvis. I tend to believe that Priscilla was not good for Elvis in the sense that, they didn't have that vibe, that connection, they didn't have that many things in common to have a successful relationship. And also, Elvis wanted to be, a party animal. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too. But one thing I will say that I'm really happy that Priscilla did, like some may be, not like her for the fact that she's kept the name Presley all these years, even after they divorced. But you have to admit, you have to be happy as an Elvis fan that Graceland is open to the public. In 1977, Elvis was not doing very well financially. When he passed away, he had, I believe, $1 million and maybe in his savings account, because he always wanted to say he was a millionaire. And I believe he had $100,000 in his checking account. Now, by 1982, Graceland was on the verge of foreclosure. And in 1982, Graceland was open to the public, which created millions of dollars in revenue and saved Graceland and saved Elvis's possessions and his home, so we can go and visit it and spend that time touring there. So it's the number 2 tourist attraction in the United States, and I was there in September of this last year, and it was so fun. I loved it. Funny thing is now, every year I remember them saying that Elvis was the highest earning celebrity, and now he's the 5th highest, so he's dropped a few. I hope Elvis picks it up to the number 1 spot, because I want him to, be dominant in everything. But that's the video. Priscilla says she wasn't too overly impressed with Elvis, and I think that, no matter if they're down to earth or not, Elvis was such a huge star. I'm surprised you weren't, but she could just be saying that, or maybe Elvis just had such a quality about him to where he made you feel, relaxed. So anyway, thanks for watching this video, guys. Hit the like button. It helps to grow the channel. Make sure if you haven't subscribed, you subscribe now. Check out the links to my Patreon and Bible and fitness page in the description of this video, and we'll talk to you next time.